Every day, youth in America wake up and face the same questions. Who am I? Where am I fully accepted? What makes me valuable? The reality of the situation is, to most youth, the answers to these heart questions are unclear. This lack of clarity has led to a rise in sexual activity. There has also been an increase in sexually transmitted diseases and unplanned pregnancies, challenges youth aren't equipped to solve alone. This is the state of the youth in America.
My name is Katie. I'm 25 years old, and I didn't wait until marriage to have sex. Growing up, my parents didn't really talk to me about sex. So I learned about sex the way most people learn about sex. I learned about it from my friends, and then I learned about, the facts about STDs and pregnancy from health class at school.
Sex is a cornerstone of marriage. For youth, it's best that sex is discussed from within the family first, because exposure to sexual content is a daily experience in our culture.
Looking back, I don't really feel like anybody ever talked to me about when I was supposed to have sex. Culturally, I think that if you asked most people when you're supposed to have sex, they would tell you that it's when you're in love. The problem with that is most women believe that sex equals love. When I first became sexually active, I wasn't getting a lot of love at home. There was a lot of tension and conflict, and I felt wanted, I think society tells us that if you are engaged in a physical relationship, that is a way to show that you're wanted, you're desirable, sexy, powerful, and I felt like that was what I was expected to be. I wanted to show that I could handle anything, and that I was tough, and that I was independent, and I could have what I want, when I wanted, how I wanted it.
Every adult at one point was a youth. While technology changes, the core issues are still the same. We are all influenced by what we value and look outside ourselves to shape our perception of sex.
As women, we have such a strong desire to be loved. Sometimes our hearts and our brains get confused that if this person that's standing in front of me, whether it's in my classroom, whether it's in a bar room, wherever it is, that this person that's standing in front of me, that appears to like me, that appears to be attracted to me, our brain and our hearts get confused.
Jen Bowen is the director of Iowa Right to Life and an expert in the moral decline of our nation's sexual standards.
We are so far into a culture of I want what I want when I want it, and I want what I want when I want it, and I don't want any repercussions. We have women in our society as young teenagers, that believe that calling themselves a slut is a good thing. And we're better than that. Women are better than that. And we have this mindset of, hey, if it feels good, let's do it. And we're paying a high price for it. Whether it's through ending the lives of our unborn before they're born, whether it's significant spikes in STDs and diseases, whether it's a lack of freedom because of those STDs, we're paying a high price. We're paying a high price because, more relationships end outside of marriages, more marriages end. I mean, we're paying a high price all throughout society that we weren't necessarily paying 50, 60, 70 years ago.
We gather all our ideas about sex from our experiences, and we head out into the world. But yet, our hearts, made by God, still need what they were designed for.
These lies that are being directed towards men and women, directed towards men, saying that you're not man enough, if you're not going out and getting some, and telling women that you're not valuable if you're not getting a man to have sex with you. It's just, it's so backwards because women want to be loved and they want to be taken care of, they want to be protected, and men want to be respected, they want to be honored.
Sex was made by God to create a lifelong bond between a man and a woman. This is why God instructs us to save sex for marriage. It's the way He designed it to be. Without the promises and commitment of marriage, any romantic relationship is temporary. People that engage in sex and lose the relationship experience a deep and painful separation. Society has felt the consequences that have resulted from premarital sex. Every year in the United States, 4 million teens are diagnosed with a sexually transmitted disease, and unplanned pregnancies create difficult situations. For people overwhelmed by brokenness, hope is here. God has called people to specifically minister to both men and women overwhelmed by their situations. God's Spirit is calling us back.
At InterVisions Healthcare, we provide education, resources, and counseling for people who are dealing with a crisis.
Informing people about the truth and creating space for them to make rational decisions is the best way to serve someone in crisis. InterVisions Healthcare provides the right support for people who need compassionate care.
When people come through the clinic, we want them to feel hope. We want them to feel love. And we want them to know that we love them. We want them to know that God loves them. And that their past actions are not who they are, but who they were. And so by coming through the clinic and looking forward, they can reconcile with God, with their faith, and hopefully live a much more holy life.
People come to InterVisions from all over Iowa. Their stories might be different, but their needs are the same.
We recently had a young woman come into the clinic who was pregnant and quite scared. And the situation of her potential pregnancy was really detrimental to her future because it meant, if she was pregnant, incarceration. And so she was very abortion-minded and very, very scared. And the nurses spent special time with her and tried to calm her and assure her that everything would be okay. And they confirmed that she was pregnant. And with her abortion-minded state, all she wanted to talk about was that she needed to get an abortion. That was really important to her, that she couldn't allow herself to be in a position where she could potentially be incarcerated. And so she was quite scared. They took her into the ultrasound room. She was luckily 6 weeks along so that they could do an ultrasound. And as soon as that picture came up on the screen, they saw not one baby, but 2 babies. And that's a really big deal for us when we can see 2 babies. And the moment that she saw those 2 little heartbeats pounding away and jumping around in that womb, all of her abortion-minded mentality just kind of lifted. And all of a sudden she realized that this was a life. This was 2 lives, and that it brought value. And from that moment on, then she was willing to talk about resources that it would take. And she handed back the nurses the book that said, what to think about before having an abortion. She says, I don't need this because I'm not having an abortion. And it was just so powerful for us to see the transformation in her and how she went from being so abortion-minded to being so life-affirming for her own children. And at that point, it wasn't about her. It was about them.
InterVisions Healthcare offers free medical services, including STD testing and education, pregnancy testing, and state-of-the-art ultrasound. They provide non-judgmental counseling for people in all situations at all walks of life. The ultimate hope is to lead people into a relationship with Jesus Christ, the source of true healing.
I decided that I was fed up with my emotional state, and I was done being so abusive to myself. So I decided to go looking somewhere else for something to fill that hole, and that led me back to Christ. And he started to just pick me up and love on me and heal me and show me how much he loves me.
I think I'm the most inspired by watching the clients when they come in and how their heads are down and they're scared and they don't want to look us in the eye. And when they realize that they're going to be treated without judgment and with compassion, and that they have a medical professional working with them, and that gives credibility to what we do. And they go through the process of, the counseling and the resources, and it lifts them up. And by the time they leave the clinic, their heads are up, there's a bounce in their step that they didn't have before. And even though they still have a process to go through with their crisis, they feel, again, empowered by the help that they've received and the hope then that they have for their future.
If you or someone you know is facing an unplanned pregnancy or the possibility of an STD, InterVision's healthcare can help.